Joining me around this table, Dr. Russell Moore, president of the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, Father Edward Beck, a CNN religion commentator, Reverend Delman Coates, senior pastor at the D.C. area megachurch, and in 2014, a candidate for Maryland lieutenant governor on the Democratic side, and Rabbi Matt Gerwitz of Congregation B'nai Jeshurun in Short Hills, New Jersey. I hope I got that right, Rabbi. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. Let me start with you, Dr. Moore, because the situation in Arkansas and Indiana, it really took a lot of people by surprise. And I imagine the governors of Arkansas and Indiana. Why do you think this caused such an uproar?
Well, I think it's really unfortunate that it caused such an uproar. As a supporter of Religious Freedom Restoration Acts, what was happening in both of those states was a straightforward attempt to protect religiously motivated people in order to have a fair balancing act in court.
You supported these laws?
I supported these laws as they were originally introduced. And then the hysteria that happened after that was unfortunate in all sorts of reasons, for all sorts of reasons. One of them being the fact that you have a mischaracterization of what religious freedom is, how religious freedom protects all people, and then also the way that some of the leaders responded to the backlash.
What is your take on this?
Well, I'm concerned about the religious freedom laws, principally because I think it provides the potential for people to use their religion as a basis for discrimination and bias. I'm very concerned because my sense is that people do not consistently apply what they regard as their religion. And so this is not a protection of belief. It's potentially a protection of bias. And one of the things that makes our country so great is that we have found a way to do two things: to protect religious freedom and individual liberty at the same time. And I think the reason you had this outcry is because people all across the country are concerned about the precedent that this could establish for people using their religion as a basis to discriminate against a whole group of people based on their sexual orientation, country of origin, their own religious beliefs. I'm very concerned about it.
And Rabbi, these laws were brought forward by Christian conservatives in both of these states. What does your faith say about this issue?
As far as it coming from a fundamentalist suggestion, I'm different. I see the Bible as one that I live by the spirit of the law and not the letter of the law. I think the spirit of the law is one that teaches us to love our neighbor as ourselves, to not oppress the stranger, because we were once strangers in the strange land. And I think these laws are taking people, putting them into a box and objectifying them.
And Father Beck, I want to play something for you because I think it's interesting. Pope Francis, as you know, was asked about sort of an issue related to this. He was asked about whether gays should be able to serve as priests. And what he said in response to that question really took the world by storm. Let's play a little bit of what the Pope had to say.
If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge him?
There has been an evolution, has there not?
The evolution has been one of inclusion. I think what this Pope has said is you have to bring everyone into the conversation, that everybody has a place at the table. Have the conversation and see where the people are. With regards to this law, the federal law seemed to suffice until gay marriage started to gain traction in the states. And then suddenly these other kinds of laws were made. So I think that it was very definitely in response to gay marriage and to kind of put some strongholds on it.
Was this a teachable moment for the GOP, do you think?
Yeah, but it was disappointing because it wasn't for an issue of justice. It was an economic issue. You have the NCAA Final Four. He was losing money. People were saying, businesses were saying, you can't do this to us. And so they said, okay, well, let's look at this again and let's make it what it's really supposed to be. And now the right, the extreme right, is saying, no, why did you backtrack? You should have left it as it was.
And before we move off of this topic, Dr. Moore, I want to ask you the question I asked Father Beck, and that is, was this a teachable moment for the GOP? Do you think this should be a litmus test for Republican candidates for the presidency in 2016?
Yes, absolutely. This is a litmus test in terms of whether or not a candidate supports religious liberty for all people. That applies to Christians, to Muslims, to Jains, to Hindus, and to everyone else. And that's a question that, we went through the past two presidential cycles with a lot of questions being asked in the debates, but none about religious liberty. But over the last 6 years, we have had constant assaults on religious liberty in this country, from the Little Sisters of the Poor, the HHS mandate, and one thing after another. We need to know up front where candidates stand on.
Do you feel like your faith is under attack?
I think faith in general is under attack because I think there's a secularizing strand in American life that doesn't understand religious motivation at all.
People of faith are concerned about what's taking place in corporate boardrooms and not really preoccupied with what's happening in people's private bedrooms. The scriptures that I read have more to say about poverty and addressing how we care for the least of these. And I wish there was more conversation from the religious right and groups of a variety of religious backgrounds that talked about how we can care for the poor, how we can care for the orphans, the widows, those in our society who have been locked out and left out, addressing concerns about social justice, mass incarceration. I think these are the kinds of issues that people of faith
They're not
all
always
across
on the
the
table.
country are grappling with.
And Rabbi, I want to turn to the presidential race that is taking shape. But Ted Cruz was the first to jump in. He announced his candidacy at Liberty University, which is a university that was founded by Jerry Falwell. How did that strike you, to see a candidate for the presidency of the United States launch his campaign from a university that is essentially founded by Christian conservatives?
I think it would have worked well in the 90s and maybe pre-2001. I think it's tone deaf now. I think it's tone deaf because I do not think faith is under attack. What I do believe is I have members of my congregation who so badly want to embrace faith, and when they hear the kinds of things they've heard during the last couple of weeks, it makes them think, if that's what faith is about, then I don't want any part of it. But they want spiritual life, they want inner life. And, before 2001, there was a luxury to think about the Mary Shivos of the world, to think about those kinds of wedge issues that worked really well to get people elected. Well, guess what? Since then, I think it's 36 states have now passed gay marriage laws. And I think either America is beginning to move on or beginning to see that people of all stripes have a place around the table.
And Father Beck, what do you make? Because I think it's fair to say that Ted Cruz is wearing his religion, his faith on his sleeve. I don't think that's a slam on Ted Cruz. Do you find that to be authentic when you see candidates, political candidates, wearing their faith on their sleeves?
I think perhaps it may be authentic for them, but polls show that Americans don't want it. Americans want to keep that separation. And so I think that they do it at their own peril, because people are going to say, look, if that's what it's going to be about for you, just bringing your faith into every decision, then you're not going to represent the vast majority of the country, and therefore you may not be our candidate.